None of the buttons work. So we're here for a
You're
minute, which isn't even ready.
You're nervous for a second, weren't you?
I just, every week more buttons are broken. There we go. That's the screen we want. Every week we get further away from God's light.
I think it's just shoddy, workmanship, I guess, on your part. So, I mean, there's no one to blame but yourself, as none of us know how to do anything anyway, so.
Right. And we didn't even have internet till about an hour ago, so it's fine. But hey, welcome to Gray Areas. It's episode, 678. There we go. Got it. Fixed it. June 24th, 2025. For the people who are not on the video side, it's just me and Cody, because Sean is camping and Dave is in New York.
Dave could have joined, but he's just not that committed to being in 3 hours different in the time zone. Sean, I'm assuming, also doesn't have internet very well, so that's, more better excuse.
No, but he did eventually respond to some texts about the internet because we had to have somebody come out. We didn't have it for about 24 hours, but it's back, and so are we. We are going to go ahead and finish off, or at least get close to finishing off, this wrestler tier list. This is an interesting time because there's a couple things you could argue could change since the last time we went over this. It's been a few months. So we might look at that. We might review the list and where we're at the moment. And also, there's also the current situation in Saudi Arabia where they're headed for Night of Champions here this weekend. And sure, there's a ceasefire, I guess, maybe, kind of. It's unclear. But that's an interesting time to be a wrestler.
You need to fucking ask Iran and Israel is who you need to ask if there's a ceasefire.
Yeah, probably, yeah. We can full screen that. There we go. We can.
It's hard to laugh about it since people have been injured, hurt, I guess, and killed, even in the small strikes they've had. But in a sense that was,
yeah, it's a mess. There's no two ways about it.
Watching a man with a very large ego finally realize that people didn't listen to him is one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time.
And drop an F-bomb on the front lawn of the White House, which, I mean, his supporters will love it because they love everything he does, and I don't really care one way or the other. I'm not opposed to some fucking profanity, but still.
I was like, as the proponent of television should stop censoring sports because profanity exists in sports, and you should just change the television rating to deal with that. It's hard to bitch about it, but it was very entertaining.
So we are resuming where we left off.
Right.
Again, tier lists are usually a little bit better on the video side, but we'll try and make it make sense on the audio side as well. We'll talk about where some of these folks ended up in previous versions. But we're going through the remaining roster. Now, you might be looking at this if you're on the video side and you're like, oh my god, there's so many. We're not ranking everybody. That's crazy. But there's several notable names on here we still need to get to. And it's possible this even leaks into another episode, which we would probably just air when we're going to be gone anyways. So we'll see how it goes. If we get about 45 minutes in, there's still plenty left. We'll just split that off into one final part and wrap it up then.
We did do Jeff Hardy. I was wrong. We did actually already cover that. Okay.
I think you insisted last time.
I think I did, partly because of what we're gonna get into, and I'll leave it for when we get to one of the other guys related to that. We probably aren't going to get to the Dudleys, who are known well for the Edge and Christian Hardy thing. But when we get to Matt and then Christian, I think we're probably going to put both of them on here. I'll get to what I was going to get to on that.
While we're staring at this, before we start moving more names in, is there anything that looks like it needs to change? There was some pushback on Braun Breaker, but his star continues to rise.
I was going to say, man, if anything, I start to look at Dominic and I'm like, God damn it. It continues to work.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we're set up now with 6 months without Liv Morgan on screen, I'm really intrigued if we run back a very similar storyline and how much the crowd still eats it up with the Roxanne Perez angle that we're going with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the guy's still just fine in the ring, but the character work of all this has just worked so well.
And Jey Uso is still huge.
Yeah. We could dive into that's a good transition to doing Gunther right away, honestly, is Jay's title reign of being very over, but again, over and a draw versus a superstar level. It's if Jay still had the belt and we were running through this a lot longer, and again, it's the faces chasing titles and then defending titles that always struggles, I guess, to say the least. Which then works into Gunther, who he's basically been dealing with for how many months has it been now? It feels like we're bordering on a year of that type of view. Maybe it hasn't been that long. It just feels like. There he is, down next to Harley Race.
Yeah, I don't. It's tough because I almost liked him better as Walter. It's cool to see he's really slimmed down. He didn't really need to. This is a different era of WWE, but still, it's probably better for him long term, and he's still plenty imposing in the ring, so that's all fine. The chops are always fun. He's got 6 finishers. He just chains into each other whenever he feels like it sometimes. That's That's all well and good. I can't put him above Jey Uso.
I was gonna say
like, that's the barometer right there at the start.
Right? Isn't he just in over for right now still, no matter what they're looking for in him long term or however long term it really feels like? It just feels like he's just going to end up in over. And I mean, I don't know. We've done this for a handful of years now. I start to wonder what the ceiling actually is with that. I mean, the Imperium vibe with henchmen guys and being introduced and all that, losing all of that has torn some of the luster off of it. It's not like he can talk himself. It's perfectly fine. But the presentation of it all, I enjoyed a bit more than just him as him. And granted, now he's got to deal with this Goldberg thing, which is you're taking one for the team there, man. And the best I can say. And so I don't know how far it goes. Is Gunther a merchandise mover?
That's the problem, right? He doesn't really have a hook.
No.
So we know Jay's got the yeet and the entrance and all that stuff. We know Dominic's got all of his antics. We know Braun Breaker's got the ridiculously athletic stuff and the spears that go viral. It's not necessarily fair to measure Gunther by that. He's the ring general. He's not really meant to be flashy. But to that point, it's like, is he sort of capped on how big he can get just because he doesn't have any of that? He doesn't have really a memorable entrance. He doesn't have any of those hooks. Maybe. Because as a contrast, we talked Goldberg to death, and I'm not saying we should move him up, but look at the pop Goldberg got in 2025 when he's 58 years old, when we know he's going to be a disaster in the ring in this match that's coming up, but people still pine for that peak Goldberg in a way that's like you almost could make the case for bottom of superstar for him. And that works against Gunther in the case, I think, where it's like I could put him next to Jey Uso and I could live with it, but it can't be any higher than that.
I mean, do I sound like an asshole if I say he's like the rich man's version of Cesaro?
Kind of. I mean, he's got a more believable look and physical prowess to him than Cesaro. I mean, Cesaro was a freak in nature, obviously, but Cesaro didn't look imposing. Yeah. He just did imposing things. Gunther both looks and is imposing.
But it just feels like the struggle overall. It's like we've stuck Rollins with Heyman. I feel like Heyman with Gunther, whatever, would make him more interesting, I guess, as an act that gets put over and being even more imposing and have this mystique around him. I feel like he'd be a better pairing in that sense than what we're doing with Rollins right now.
I think next to Jey Uso makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, they've been tied together for a relatively long time right now. But I'm just saying, Cesaro's one card lower, and obviously Gunther's got the main belt and been carrying it for a while. And yet it just feels like he, across the company, the C story. I mean, he's got the B-ish belt of the two belts. And it just feels like behind some bloodline stuff. It's like, I mean, Jay is relatively vaguely related to the bloodline. But it just feels like that story is down the list of things that people are pop for or are interested in. Dare I say, the Judgment Day stuff is consistently put over more on the cards, whether that's, Liv being involved or Dominic being involved or Finn, whatever it might be. It just feels like there's this weird space that he's occupying and continues to occupy, and I don't feel like it's been elevated up in any way.
It's because he's not anything with the bloodline.
Yeah.
And the bloodline has usurped pretty much everything in wrestling for the last 5 years now.
It's fair.
Some form of it or another. And now you can argue Cena, Cody, that stuff is an offshoot of that. And he's not really been involved in almost any of that. And that's probably come to his own detriment. Well, as hot as that story has been, he's barely been by it in passing.
Yeah.
I think it's fine to have him there. I think it might be a little high. But Braun Strowman's out of the company now. So if he's the bar for mid-card, then I guess this is fine because Gunther's an active big champion.
I think it's the bar of, are you even worth ranking in something that isn't inconsistent or jobber, basically, is what it feels like.
But he's certainly not a draw. So no. I guess it has to end there. I'm scrolling. I'm looking at the main screen, which is really small, so it's hard to see sometimes. The one I wanted to start with, where did he go? There was somebody I saw, and I was like, oh, yeah, Booker T is one I think is interesting. I was looking back at there were some old matches that have been popping into my feed lately because I watched a couple of the wrestlers commenting on the old ones in present day, and now it's popping up all these old ones. I watched Kurt Angle's retrospective on his career, and then the next thing I see, of course, because the algorithm is here's the match against Shane McMahon he talked about where he threw him through the plexiglass 6 times. Except it wasn't plexiglass, it was actual glass, which he talked about. So in a similar vein, Booker T matches have been popping up lately. It's oh yeah, he has been around. He recently talked about how he would intentionally not do well in Elimination Chamber matches because he didn't want to be in the thing. didn't like the idea of it, was worried about injury, which I mean, it's hard to blame the guy. He's been going viral recently because of his commentary on a certain wrestler's maneuver. He's a tricky one because he never reaches the highest heights. He gets pushed to the side a lot in WCW, and for the most part, it's just in Harlem Heat in that time. He gets a little bit of time to shine in WWF/E after the whole takeover and the infiltration of WCW, but not really. So, I don't exactly know where he goes. It feels like mid-card is disrespectful. He certainly can't be a draw, I don't think. So is he just stuck in over?
It's a weird spot because I feel like the NWO storyline, maybe, and I could be wrong, but I remember thinking back to my childhood days, and DDP survives WCW's obsession with the NWO, and the NWO is feuding with itself and offshooting and breaking apart, whatever. And there was this handful of guys that were just kind of revolving around that. A lot of them were cruiserweights because cruiserweights didn't get involved in the NWO stuff a whole lot. And Booker T's the weird one because his, on-screen brother is Stevie Ray ends up in NWO, if I remember the early portion of that, right? I thought he was.
One of them.
And so Booker T feuds early on with that, and then just kind of I don't know. I feel like he just disappears. There's a gap of years where I'm what was he doing in wrestling before the mid 2000s in WWE or WWF, whatever, as you're talking about. And it's I think of the same thing. I'm his ceiling got capped because he wasn't inside that storyline that dominated the company for so many years. Whereas DDP kind of survives that and it's fine. I mean, Ged Goldberg, I guess, is vaguely the same thing, although he got involved in the NWO stuff. So I'm you're right. Where does he go? He probably should still be above Ziggler and Braun Breaker for the things he achieved. I mean, he is he's beyond. Did he end up being a 5-time champion, or is he more than a 5-time?
It depends on what you're counting exactly. I mean, you want to start counting tag titles and whatnot, it goes way higher.
Yeah, and so it's weird because we have guys that carry the main belt that, we don't need to be putting them into anything higher than over. Just because you had the main belt for whatever stretch of time doesn't mean you all of a sudden deserve to be at the top. We have plenty of guys who just carried the belt and it was okay, cool, that was it. Unfortunately, Big E is going to be an example of that if we even rank Big E on this. So you're right. It's he just has to land an over somewhere because he's got to be higher than mid card given his longevity. I think more than anything.
I think so. When he reinvents himself as a commentator, so next to JBL makes sense to me. They both had a couple different world championship reigns. Booker T's got some infamous stuff that lives on, the Spinneroonie, the brawl in the grocery store with Stone Cold. He's had some stuff that's stuck out over the years, and again, mid card feels like a slap in the face. And yet, can you put him in the same tier as a Jeff Hardy? Was he ever that beloved or that over? No.
But that's the epitome of over is guys who held the main belt could hold. Man, it's what Ziggler was. Who could hold a storyline for 3 to 6 months or whatever, and then they kind of just return to their high mid-card range of things. And that's, again, where Breaker is for now. It's what Dom is doing literally right now. It's what Jay just did. I guess Dom doesn't have the main belt, but same point. It just feels like he lands in that very Ziggler-y JBL range. Maybe looking back at JBL's things, oh yeah, there's a couple feuds that are interesting and all that, but it's not at the level of all the guys well above him that have had all those feuds for the main belt.
So while we're ranking people who are difficult and he's already on the screen, what the hell do you do with the Big Show?
I mean, how interested were you when he was on the screen? At what point did the gimmick of him being really big, not be a big deal for you anymore?
I don't know. It was weird because, obviously he starts as the Giant in WCW, and it's still the time when wrestling is in its very 90s mode where it's if you're huge, that's it.
Yeah.
You're the guy. And there's nobody bigger than him, and people were trying to figure out how to make sense of him, and the big choke slam, and I don't know.
His matches aren't entertaining. They never knew what to do with him. He's again has to have the record for heel and face turns. It's the joke online in the wrestling community of how often it goes back and forth. I'm is he even in draw? Because even as a kid, when he debuts as the Big Show in WWE, I did not care because I had already watched him in WCW, and I'm all right, cool, he's big, but back then, this is gonna be a funny comparison, but back then, I watched Kevin Nash, who's also pretty big, and could actually kind of wrestle, and I just never felt like the Big Show was it's the epitome of the carny days of you do like 3 or 4 moves and it's big guy and it's a spectacle, but it's like that didn't work in the day and age of like the early 2000s for me very well. And that's when he again moves into WWE. And so I never got it. I never really I was entertained by the matches, other than when we do the big versus big match and then we do the gimmicked ring and it breaks and all that type of stuff, which is like, oh, well, that's funny. But I mean, there's just, I don't know. It never really clicked for me. I mean, the funniest thing he's done in a long time was him just embracing Captain Insano from Waterboy,
Right.
which he should have done a long time ago and not way late into his career, honestly.
Yeah, I think he's handy to have around because it's always like a credible threat. So if you need some kind of like in between feud for a couple months while you're waiting for a bigger one to develop for a new champion or something, you can always have him show up and be credible, whether or not he's a heel or face, which changed all the time, like you said. And I think back to WCW, he could go a little bit.
Yeah.
Before his size really just started to take a toll on his body, he was not just like a great Khali in the ring. Like he had some athleticism. He did some stuff off the top rope. Like they had stuff that a guy his size really shouldn't have been doing and probably went to his detriment when he was doing it. I can't put him in mid-card, even though he was a mess. I mean, like, this is a multiple-time world champion himself. And while we had a silly fight with Floyd Mayweather and other stuff that scars him, there's also like the Jericho run that was really good.
Yeah, and that's honestly, as a tag wrestler, he worked better. It worked better in that sense. I mean, there's a reason why I think the Jericho thing looks back. I mean, it's a funny big and small pairing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, shit, Jericho's a cruiserweight, so like that is what we did back then. And you're right, like Strowman's career, I think he ended up getting hurt and really unable to perform a lot sooner than Big Show did. But like Strowman's career would have been great if it turned out to be the Big Show's career. And so there's no way you could rank him below Braun, which means you can't put him in mid-card effectively.
No, and I think, Braun Breaker might be a hair too high like we talked about before. So like I think Big Show has to be above him.
Mm-hmm.
Braun Breaker has not done anything yet. And you could probably argue above Ziggler, and I don't know what you do with it afterward. I mean, you could put him on top of Over as far as I'm concerned. I don't know.
It's
but
weird.
Like, somewhere in there. Somewhere in the middle.
It works so, again, you're right, because in WCW I was in awe of him when I was younger, and it's the suspension of disbelief works a lot better when you're like, holy shit, like, how are we doing this? And billing him as Andre the Giant's son, right? That's the gimmick we were running for a little while.
For a little while, yeah.
And again, he was also incredibly better as a wrestler than Andre the Giant, because again, he could at least move around quite a bit more when he was younger. But yeah, I think of the mid 2000s and early 2010s, I'm just like, oh, cool, we're doing this again. And then the thing is, for the people who are new fans or young fans, that was always still a draw and fascinating, I guess, in a way. But for the people who are like longtime fans, it doesn't work as well. So you're splitting the difference in a way, to your point of he shows up for feuds here and there, and it works for a younger generation that it doesn't work on the older generation as well.
Had a good rivalry with Mark Henry. It was a good foil for Cena for a stretch there. Like, there's good stuff over his career, and it started to become more and more of a joke. Them emasculating him against the Authority was just
exactly
ridiculous. So it's tough to have him any higher than that. But I think his career as a whole deserves some credit more than the pratfalls near the end of it. See anybody that pops out? There's a lot of folks that are on the screen right now for the audio listeners, and we're just trying to go through and get the ones that really matter.
I am digging through for someone that, I mean, again, I don't know how much me and you really watched when like Earthquake was around, although Earthquake's in the Hall of Fame now. But man, that's a similar point that I was just making. Later in his career, man, is there really no one in there that really jumps out as someone I like really want to get onto the ranking?
You don't want to talk about Enzo Amore?
Not really. I could talk about Jinder. That'd be a fun one.
We can just put him in jobber, and I know that sounds weird to say about a guy who's held a world title, but
well, that's what he was. He was a jobber that we popped into the world title scene.
Did we need to move R-Truth out of jobber? I don't think so, despite him having a little more of a push lately. He's still been a career jobber who just happened to get a little
If that was
flowers.
Ron Killings and we were discussing TNA instead of WWE, it'd be a lot different, but that's not what we're talking about.
Sure. Sorry, Jinder. Don't hinder Jinder.
I mean, you pulled up Kane when you did that, so I guess there's your answer.
Okay. Yeah, Kane, boy. Weird career.
That's exactly what I was getting.
And, he starts obviously as Undertaker's brother, and he's also like invincible, and Taker hits him with like 2 or 3 tombstones at a WrestleMania, I think. I think it was a WrestleMania, and can't put him away, and it's a whole thing. And We had the whole dentist thing before that for a little while. We've got,
Isaac Yankum.
Yeah, we've got comedy chops with Team Hell No. Probably my favorite version of Kane. It was weird because for a long time I was like, well, we don't want to see him without his mask off and we don't want him to talk. And eventually he showed that didn't really need the mask. The mask was cool looking, but like he was also kind of freakish looking on his own if he wanted to be, and had decent promo delivery and again surprisingly good comedic chops. So like I think that deserves credit. In fact, I look back at like a Kurt Angle and I'm thinking to myself, maybe Kurt should be higher because the people that could do everything and still be believable badasses are few and far between. Like Kurt Angle could be the dumbest, nerdiest motherfucker alive. and the silly backstage skits with Stone Cold or whatever. But when it came to the ring, you didn't go like, oh, look at this joke. You're like, oh, shit, that's Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that with Kane, where you're like, oh, shit, here's the pyro, here's the choke slams, here's all this. So no matter how silly he was always a threat.
I think because you look back on those, again, it's the Big Show's problem in a way. I'm like, he reinvents himself a little bit, but it's still kind of the same inspiration of that. Kane's career path, like you said, it's a weird career path, but I'm like, how many different versions of him are you like at least entertained for a chunk of time by? I mean, the introduction is being Undertaker's brother that he tried to burn alive and all this, and then we unmask him and we've got like black charcoal shit smeared on his face to make it look like it's burns and stuff. And then we alter his ring attire and we have him talk. Originally, we have him talk with the thing that makes him sound like what's the like cancer thing or the
voice
thing
box thing.
Voice box thing when you've had cancer, you have to use that for make you be able to speak. There's so many versions of that I'm really impressed with the writing of how well they were able to like handle him over the years and be like, all right, we're gonna get further and further removed from the fact that you were burned alive as a child and then thought to be dead before Paul Bearer makes you show up in the same wrestling company as Undertaker. That's such Carney level insane wrestling 80s type shit that managed to work really well in the early 90s and mid 90s to then getting into fucking around with Daniel Bryan as Team Hell No. There's so many levels of that. It's really impressive. I mean, he tags with X-Pac for a while too, right?
Yep. There's that. There's the Brothers of Destruction where he's with the Undertaker for a couple of years. There's a lot of different tag teams. He's got individual success as well. A handful of world title runs. To me, it's like top of over because I just don't know that Kane on his own ever was enough of a draw to put him on the level of a Jeff Hardy. But like anybody else in over, I look at compared to Kane, especially because he's got the in-ring component. Like that dude can go, much like Undertaker for a guy his size. The stuff he does off the top rope, running the ropes, etc. Like it just deserves more credit than I think he gets sometimes. So I think I have him at the very tippy top of over because I don't know that Luke Harper deserves to stay there.
He does get trapped a little bit by who his dance partner is, whether it's a tag partner in that way or it's the Undertaker storyline specifically. He does get really stuck by that, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, I think maybe they did see a ceiling there in terms of writing where he was versus where the Undertaker was. There's a reason why one is where he is and one's where he is going to go here, probably in high up and over. I mean, I look at some of the guys on the back end of Draw, and I'm like, Kane is at his run longer than them, but some of their highs, I suppose, are still higher in a way on their own because you can remember those feuds. So I think you're right. I wanted to put him in Draw, but you're right. I don't know where he slides in unless you just put him behind Hardy.
I do dock him ever so slightly for what's happened after his career. Not nearly to the extent of a Vince McMahon or somebody else we talked about earlier who was problematic. He's allowed to have his own political views, and that's fine. But nonetheless, I don't necessarily have to like it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hadn't even thought about factoring that part of the weirdness in on the back end. I will say, really does just disappear from the company. Not like there's not a whole lot to like his career winding down. He just disappears because he goes and starts running for office, and then one day he's just gone, and Kane just doesn't exist anymore.
And he's just, I guess you could bring him back and it'd be like, oh yeah, it's Kane, and he'd just kind of pick up where he left off. And also, I got to do this. I'm moving Luke Harper down.
That's fine.
Not too far, not a tier. Just like we talked about him early on. He was one of the first people we ranked, beloved and all that, but like his career never reached the heights that needs to be above like the Big Show.
No, I mean, it probably would have.
It probably would have, especially the way that he was getting treated in AEW. But we can't do what could have been. It's the same with Bray Wyatt. Like he couldn't be any higher. He could have been a megastar if treated properly, but he wasn't.
Yeah,
And then he
yeah,
died.
you're right. Bray's still fine because Bray is still leading the company with weird shit and convinces them to do some weird shit, and he gets allowed to do it. So inherently, I think he's got the the draw level.
And now Harper's ended up under Bray, so now whoa,
Yeah.
ooh.
Identically, now you have to make sure that stays that way.
That's right. So it's going to be difficult, but we're going to try our best. We talked about Kevin Nash. We might as well do him and Scott Hall. Matt Hardy is also down here now. Mick Foley. Like we got a few other ones that I think are worth looking at.
Yeah, you popped Kofi up now too, which again, I have a hilarious love relationship with.
So I guess let's talk about Hall and Nash, who are, I think we've mentioned this with the last few. Maybe we've saved them all for this reason. Like, difficult to rank. I mean, there's a variety of things that are happening here. We've got NWO, early founding member, obviously one of the first three with Hall. We've got the Outsiders and their reign as a tag team in WWF. We've got him in the infamous matches where, like, sometimes he looks like the most athletic dude alive, and sometimes, towards the end, he's getting made fun of by CM Punk because he can't go in the ring anymore because it's just like a lot of other big guys, his body has taken its toll on him over the years, and now all of a sudden he's super stiff and can't move. Like, I was not really alive for the Diesel era, but he was one of the top stars of the company. Not the top. There's a top tier that doesn't involve him, but he's on the next one right below it. And then Hall, I mean, never quite as big as Nash individually. Yeah, you've got like the ladder match, Intercontinental title stuff where he was a pioneer, and everybody wanted to look like Scott Hall over Kevin Nash because he was just the epitome of fucking cool. They feel like they need to be ranked together somewhere because even though I think I have Nash slightly ahead of Hall, like they were so inseparable throughout their career that wherever they end up, I kind of want to just put them next to each other.
I think you're right. I mean, they are so tied together. I think what Nash strikes me as is, we talk about athletes who are like, oh, they're really good, but like the motivation isn't there. They're kind of lazy. If they worked a little bit harder, that's what it feels like with Nash after he left. As I guess as we got through the NWO angle, I look back and I'm like, man, he fucking coasted through the back end, middle, whatever part of that his career that was. To where it's like you are a big deal in the early 90s. It's a massive deal when you leave the company and you pop up on the show and we don't have the internet at the time. And that's if that happened today, where you had two pretty upper card guys not have it leaked that they were leaving a company and just show up on the competing show all of a sudden, and most fans don't know that that's going to happen, and run this invasion-y angle that is, it's not believable in modern, like present day, but again, just it's so cool the way they did it, I think, to say the least. And then to have that be the turning point for Hogan to go heel and all that, they're like really pivotal in wrestling history. It's crazy. But how much does that like influence them into being over a lot of these guys that are on this list and their impact and things like that? I mean, it feels like they land somewhere around draw. I think for the most part. And again, you're right. Like, I think I look back as a kid and watching Hall and seeing how cool Hall is, and I mean the catchphrases and stuff like that. And then I'm just like, yeah, you're right. Hall like didn't go as high as an individual as I thought he did.
Yeah.
In his career. And that was like jarring to realize like, oh shit, Scott Hall is like, was the equivalent on this list. That's like a high mid-card guy that kind of really only carried mid-card titles. That's like more contemporary right now. And I'm like, I'm having trouble like matching him with someone. I don't really know who on this list I would pair it with.
The career accolades remind me of Ziggler.
Is it right? Okay, so that's not like
hovering around the Intercontinental title most of the time. Has a bit of a tag team run, a couple different variations.
I mean, because the bizarre one I was going to go is the Miz. We haven't ranked yet.
We have not ranked yet, and we will.
But like that's who I vaguely thought of when I looked at career accomplishments and stuff like that. And again, I'm not comping their skills in ring or their mic ability or anything like that, but like just in terms of where they landed as they were a steady presence and then go up a little bit and come back down. It feels like that's where Hall was. And when we look back on him, I just feel like he's regarded higher on the card than that. And maybe it's because companies are smaller, we have less guys to pull from and all that. But and again, the NWO angle, I'm like, that's what it really feels like. And so that does cap how high I would want to put him from a career accomplishment standpoint, I guess.
I think I have him bottom a draw. Gotta go find Scott. It's alphabetical by first name.
This, of course, includes Nash being Diesel and Hall being Razor Ramon. And...
Yes, because I think, in those versions of themselves, they're both near the top of the card.
Yeah.
And then as a tag team, they sort of reinvent themselves. And then, as you said, the whole NWO stuff, it continues to define wrestling. You just didn't see a faction like that.
Yeah.
There are others around, to be clear. I'm not saying that they started factions. But something like that was so prominent, so cool, and had such... It demanded attention on the show. So I think I have it on the bottom a draw.
Because the NWO, before it overstayed its welcome, I feel like it's like a 12, 18-month type of run. Before we start fracturing off Wolfpack and things like that.
Even the Wolfpack was okay at
and
the
again,
start.
And that's the start, I think, of it. Again, the Sting getting involved and then like officially with fake Sting and all that stuff. Like, that's still all really entertaining when you look back on it. As goofy as a lot of it is, that's still all really entertaining bits of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that is about the 18-month, maybe 2-year mark of it for the most
part. Let's go to Kofi since you mentioned him.
What a fascinating career.
Yeah.
I think, again, this guy has to do a bullshit Jamaican accent to start off. I still think one of the funniest things I've seen in wrestling in a long time is Triple H just derailing a fucking Survivor Series group promo by saying, "Didn't you used to have a Jamaican accent?" And catching Kofi, just being a dick, and catching Kofi off guard in the ring. To being, again, tagged with Punk. I mean, that's just a weird tag team when you look back on it. To shifting into, again, I mean, so much of what he and Ian Woods have said about they might get fired until the New Day takes off, and then the New Day is not even working for a chunk of time before it becomes one of the most bizarre, nonsense, modern-day things we've done. And then, again, doesn't really get an ending because he breaks his neck, and we're probably... I think what we might have gotten is what we're going to get as the resolution to that, a couple months ago. And now they're heels, and they're hanging around. I mean, again, in a way, Kofi also is tied to the Usos quite a bit on this back run. And again, I'm skipping over the whole Kofi Mania thing, which was great. I mean, again, it's short-lived in what we get of it for the 4 months, I suppose, between like around February when we start pushing to have him main event, and then Brian embracing that, running it to WrestleMania, and then wiping Kofi completely dead because we just need to get the belt off of him.
God. Which, fair or not, tarnishes that title reign.
Exactly. I mean, it ruins the title run, and you try to just not think about what happens after you win the title. But the moment at WrestleMania and things like that, I mean, like, it's special. It's a really, really special run, accompanied by them being just carrying that tag division with the Usos through a long time of being entertaining. With a lot of other, funny, gimmicky, goofy tag teams around. I mean, maybe they overstayed the welcome of the goofiness, but if you want just stupid fun for a chunk of time, I mean, when those three were fucking around with the Usos and we get into the rap battle thing and stuff like that, they have a really good run of being entertaining and then just obviously selling crazy amounts of merch.
Yeah.
For this company. I mean, the faction itself is going to be in the Hall of Fame. And then, as dumb as the Hall of Fame level is, you could argue Kofi's probably a Hall of Famer individually, along with being in the tag team as itself. And all of that still probably only lands him like high end of over. I think I'm not gonna push you guys. I also just enjoy Kofi. I mean, for being a really slender guy who doesn't look like an imposing wrestler. And not a big high, top rope guy either, really. I think, I mean, how many top moves do you think of Kofi doing splashes or flips? He doesn't really do that. And so, again, if it becomes Royal Rumble, being freakishly athletic, that only does go so far. And there's a reason why New Day helped him get the title, and he didn't get a title when he wasn't involved in that group.
I have a hard time getting him out of mid-card.
That's fair.
And again, I hate to let the title reign be ruined by a 18-second or whatever it was squash against Brock Lesnar that ended it. That's not his fault. Lord knows he didn't lobby for that or choose that. I understand.
It's fair.
There's not a lot of African Americans on this list in general, and we buried R-Truth down in Jobber, which is where he belongs, to be clear. But, we just tossed Booker T in there. We don't have a lot of other examples of anybody who's black holding that big belt. And Kofi Mania was worthwhile despite its ending because you also get the WrestleMania moment out of it and all that jazz. You know, even as an individual wrestler, he's hovering around the Intercontinental scene for a long time. Like, it's not like he doesn't have the individual accolades, and he's part of what could be, maybe, the best tag team of all time. They would say that right now as heels, but you can legitimately make the case that both them and the Usos are definitely like top 5 tag teams of all time. And yet...
That's probably fair. I mean, I think you're right, because I look at it, it's like, ugh. Jay's more over individually than Kofi was able to get over individually to get to the belt.
Yeah, even at his peak,
That's fair.
Kofi's not as big as Jay.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Which sucks. And again, Kofi Mania was a big deal, and the crowd got behind him in a big way. But a lot of that's kind of like I don't want to say sympathy, but it's kind of like a career recognition.
Oh, for sure.
Like, this guy has not gotten the shine he should have. We have a chance to make our voices heard. Let's do it. And they did, and he got that awesome moment. His family, all of that's phenomenal. So it's like, I'm sure for some people, if you're looking at this, you're like, well, what in the world are like Dominic and Braun doing above a Kofi Kingston? And it's just like, Kofi was a really, really solid. I mean, you want to use the B+ thing that I think Daniel Bryan turned against him in that feud. That's the way to apply it, because Kofi never has the heights, and when he did, he had to kind of be carried to them.
Yes.
And I'm glad he was, but I'm like, I think he's the epitome of like the gatekeeper into mid card.
You're right, though. I mean, because again, Dom gets a reaction somewhat on his own, because I mean, he was getting it on his own as a heel and being a dick before we get into the Rhea and the Liv thing. Jay is getting a reaction on his own without a group, again, a group of fans or, group itself pushing for him to get there. I argue for sure that Kofi's a better wrestler than like Dom is, or like Jay is. But you're right. Like, it really, when you point that out, it really does cap, unfortunately, right around there, because... I mean, he could have done really well if he could have gotten one kind of fucking feud of some sort with that fucking belt, and he just didn't get shit, basically.
No.
After that.
And his title reign isn't really notable even before it ends abruptly.
No.
Which sucks. And that happens to some folks. You can argue it's happening to like Tiffy time as we speak. Are we going to walk away from that going, well, that was a good time after WrestleMania? So far, the answer is not really, because I don't know that the Charlotte feud made her look much better, and now she's stuck in the black hole known as Nia Jax. So anyways, to the point, it's like sometimes, circumstances aren't in your control. Everything's booked, everything's pre-planned. Yeah, there's last-minute audibles and stuff, and Kofi can't just be like, oh, I'm going to be the champion now. That's not how any of that works. I think he did the most of his career what he could, but I can't, I don't know if he belongs in the same tier as like the Big Show. That's crazy to me.
It's fascinating to think of like, who's the all-time leader or whatever. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard, weird math thing to do of matches in WWE. Like, of shit, you're working house shows, you're working TV over and over again. Because Kofi goes back to, his introduction is 05, 06, somewhere around there, when he's doing the stupid Jamaican Trouble in Paradise things that are just so fucking funny to look back on. I mean, he's again, because Kane's a funny similar situation to that, of never got over more than Kofi did, but also was just a mainstay of being on TV for just consistently, constantly, all the fucking time.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, I'm looking at this. Let's see, this was a year ago, so it's gone up. He may have actually eclipsed the top 5 now. Kane's number 1, including his time as the dentist and not Diesel and all the other stuff.
Oh yeah, he was fake Diesel. I forgot about that one.
Unsurprisingly, the other people that have lasted a long time are in the top 5. Orton, Cena, Taker, Show. Bret Hart is 6th. Kofi Kingston is 7th. He was only 33 behind Big Show for 5th as of this thread a year ago, so one assumes, especially with dark matches and stuff, that means Kofi could be, well, hell, Cena's only got 2,240. That's only 12 more than Taker. Kofi could be 3rd all-time in matches now. To your point.
Holy shit. I mean, when I said that, I was assuming maybe he's cracked top 10 by now.
Well, it's one of two things happens. You're either at the top of the card, so you appear everywhere, like a Cena or an Orton, right? Because you're going to headline the house shows, you're going to do all that stuff. Or you never really atop the card, so you're just a solid performer who keeps going and hitting all the tour spots along the way, and you end up where Kofi did, who I think, again, I'd have to go, I don't think it's the stretch to say he's 3rd all-time now. Wow. Now, he's got 350 more matches to catch. No, more than that. Kane has 2,800 matches. As of this thread, that was more than 600 more. So I don't know if Kofi's ever going to get to number 1, but the point is that if he just being in the top 5 is not the guy you would first think of when you think of Kofi Kingston.
That makes me really happy, though. I think in hindsight, like that's really cool.
And I feel bad putting him in mid card, but it's the same thing with like CM Punk and Draw, where I'm like, I love both of those guys, but I don't think they deserve to be any higher.
No, again, if Kofi was like 40, 30 pounds heavier, was a little bit more muscle mass, like looked more wrestler-ish, or again, did some more high-end top ropes stuff to be a little bit more exciting, like Jeff did. I mean, to be fair, at least Kofi's kept his body alive, I guess, by playing it somewhat cautious over the years.
I think for a time there, we would have thought that he would have been remembered most for his Royal Rumble saves, and now the New Day stuff has far eclipsed that, and I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. I mean, rather than a gimmick in a gimmicky match.
Let's finish this section with The Miz. Since we talked about him, he's an interesting one to rank, kind of polarizing. We still will have folks like Triple H and Sting to finish off the last segment, so we're not just going to be like, leaving all the jobbers for last. We'll have a couple of headliners, and the two of them being linked does make sense given the tail end of Sting's career before the very end in AEW. And we got some other folks on here: Kevin Owens, Mick Foley. I think I want to rank LA Knight, Lex Luger. I want to get to. Like, there's some other folks we'll get to in part 4, the final one here, which will air in a couple weeks here when we're gone, or I'm gone. But let's finish with The Miz. The Miz was recently in some headlines because he had removed references to WWE from his socials. The question was Truth getting released abruptly and then brought back a week later, was he also on the chopping block, which seemed incomprehensible because he's like the company guy. We know about his upbringing. We know about his roots with the MTV reality shows and basically cutting promos there that eventually got his foot in the door. We know he's headlined a WrestleMania.
You don't want to call the challenge specifically on this wrestling show? Fine.
I think we've talked about that enough on this show and other formats. We know about his hot wife. We know about
his balls. You know about his balls.
We know about his balls. We know he got a concussion in that WrestleMania main event and kept going anyways. We know his dad's kind of annoying. We know a lot about The Miz. He's been around for a long time, and he's right underneath Kofi in that list of all-time matches, by the way. He's 8th.
That's actually who I thought would be above Kofi for sure.
No, he's just behind him, and again, now with the benefit of more time, who knows? He was about 100 behind Kofi, so I imagine that's still the case. But Miz also might be sneaking around the top 5 now. And so to me, it's like, look, was he great in the beginning? Absolutely. He was meant to be. I mean, look at him. Look at his face. Look at his punchable face. And yet, I have come around a long way on him to the point where I've tried to sway Cody as well, because I'm like, look, he doesn't do anything flashy, kind of by design. And the whole crux of his massive blow-to-blow promo with Daniel Bryan on Talking Smack years ago was, well, you nearly died because you kept putting yourself at risk in the ring. I'm the guy who's here every day because I play it safe and I'm smart. And it's worked out for him. And it's weird because you would think he would have been the guy who would have done anything to make it. Instead, he's gone the opposite approach. Always a good promo. You can stick him in any feud and he makes it better. I mean, I have him in consideration for draw.
Oh, that's where I think he should be. Probably on the back end of it, I would say. I think it's tough to land him. I have to land him right ahead of Kane, I guess, too. But he probably needs to be up there. It's a shame because you bring up the Daniel Bryan thing. The best and most I've ever enjoyed Miz and his character and everything he could offer, he couldn't even pay that off with a match because Daniel Bryan wasn't wrestling again. And that's the most fun that those shows ever were. Talking Smack, Raw Talk, whatever bullshit names they want to have. When Daniel Bryan was on that as the GM and going over it, that's when I actually watched and paid attention to those after every single one. If I was watching consistently weekly, I was watching those as well. That's really hard to get me to do, to commit that hour of over everything else we could watch or whatever. And they were like, to me, must see. And we never got to have that payoff with them, which sucks because by the time Bryan was then back wrestling, too much time had passed. We didn't want to revisit that. Talking Smack had gotten cut and moved, all that stuff. It really sucks that we lost that. And we didn't get to have that payoff because that alone, a 3-month thing that was actually on TV and wasn't just through Talking Smack on the after show, would have really elevated him. And that would have been, even if it was just 3 to 6 months, that period of his career would have brought him to, I think, a new level and new appreciation. And we just didn't get to have that. Yeah, I mean, he's still annoying. I'm still mostly unimpressed with him when he's in the ring. Again, I think he works much better when we're in tag teams. and things like that. Or again, he's playing mid-card gatekeeper, being annoying heel type of stuff. I don't really enjoy when he carries a belt for a significant portion of time, just because the match. Then he's getting more match time and pay-per-view stuff, and I mostly just don't enjoy it, I guess. But from a television character perspective, you're gonna have a 3-hour Raw, you're gonna have a 2-hour SmackDown. There's a reason why he's the guy that they default to for their little gimmicky like television shows inside of TV shows. Which again, if you're giving someone that and handing them the reins to being able to talk for a 15-minute television segment, like consistently there, or 7 minutes and transitioning to a match, does that make you a draw by default? Like the company thinks so. The company thinks you can carry a giant segment of television. That makes you a draw because they think you're a draw to hold ratings.
I have him like middle of draw, maybe ahead of Bray.
God, that's so depressing for AJ Styles.
I know. I'm looking at that, and we may want to reevaluate a couple of things as we wrap up here. Like, I'm seriously considering putting Hulk Hogan in Legend, even though
He sucks.
like the very bottom of it. But like, I'm thinking about it, and there's some stuff. Maybe Punk does go up. With The Miz, I mean, God, consistency is king. And yeah, his boring in-ring style does work against him in that sense, but it's also kept him thriving for 20 years. And, you know, we can talk about work rates and we can talk about all the flips in AEW and Canadian Destroyers, you know, not ending matches and whatever. That's personal preference stuff. Some people really like the extra athletic and acrobatic displays, and some people just think it's not grounded in wrestling at all. I understand. Doesn't matter. You know, we're not here to relitigate that stuff. But just as... I mean, when I look at the people that are in the top tiers here, a lot of them had either really, really high highs or really, really consistent careers. And that's why, like, Kane and over is iffy, like you said, because it's like, well, Kane had about as much individual success and tag team success as The Miz did. The Miz, to me, is like, he sticks out more.
Because
he
can carry those by himself. Also, you remember his work with Cena. Like, I think you remember, that is something you look back on. Cena's had a lot of great feuds and things like that. I don't think that, like, the Miz's time when he's feuding with Cena gets diminished.
No.
I mean, you're positioning him in WrestleManias against Cena. You've got him and his wife impersonating Cena and Nikki Bella. Like,
I mean, the Miz and R-Truth got a SummerSlam match against John Cena and The Rock.
Yeah.
That's not nothing.
Exactly. I'm like, if the company tells you that, then two people's personal preference here, whatever that may be between me and you, can't really override what the company is telling you. I also don't believe the Miz has been forced down my throat, like, incessantly, where it drives me fucking crazy. He's supposed to annoy the shit out of me. That's supposed to be part of the bit. And it's worked pretty consistently. It's also why he, again, is hosting American Gladiators. It's why if he chose to, and I think he's probably above this, I think he should be, like, I mean, nothing against Booker T here, but if Booker T can be a commentator, I mean, the Miz can't be a commentator?
Mm-hmm.
For the 10 years as a stretch after his ring career is done, you're telling me he can't do it? Lawler did it. Like, I mean, the Miz is built for that, and actually also does understand wrestling. I think much more than anyone gives an appreciation for.
And there's something to be said for the guys who can carry the show, like you mentioned in a segment. You know, Jericho is on that short list. Roddy Piper is on that short list, who we should look at ranking, although I don't know what the hell I would do with him. You know, the folks that can be inserted into other feuds and elevate them with ease, and that's a role that he has always been maybe the best at, because he can be a little, like, bootlicker heel, he can be a shit kicker, he can do whatever is necessary to kind of stick his neck into something and get it chopped off most of the time. And the work with Morrison is very noteworthy. He's got the Damian Sandow years where I got Sandow over in a way that had no business happening that way. I'm going to put him above Bray and not think about it too much, because I think that, you know, Bray's probably a little too high, but we love him. And I'm like, I think that's right. Does he belong next above CM Punk or Cody Rhodes? No. But at that next level of this tier, I think it makes sense.
I will say also, his whole annoying bit of getting under people's skin, I mean, it went kind of by the wayside because the feud kind of got cut off early with people getting released and, I mean, all that. But Karrion Kross annoying him in the same fucking way he's basically annoyed people in the past was actually better television than I think anyone gave it credit for in the past, like, couple months. It's a shame that we didn't get, like, better resolution to that with the Wyatt family just weirdness and all that stuff. Like we had so much between releases and injuries and all that just kind of went by the wayside. I was actually relatively entertained by that.
Yeah, and that's what's nice is he's kind of a chameleon. I mean, he's always going to be this little cocky, arrogant heel. There's been a couple stretches of Miz's face, and it's like you need to dabble with that from time to time, but that's not where he's at his best. But because that's the case, he's a great foil for almost anybody he works with.
He's a great face when he's the annoying, dickish part of a face tag team, which is what Awesome Truth is or was, whatever. It's like they're mostly faces when they do that, but it's also the Miz being annoyed and exasperated in a different version of himself, with Truth being insane. And same with Morrison. I mean, I don't think Morrison ever got presented as being like a smart person on television.
Yeah.
And Miz was like the calculated evil one of their face pairing when they were faces. I know that they were heels quite often, but Morrison's moves would also kind of force them into being faces.
Essentially, yeah. And he's doing stuff like Starship Pain, and then Miz is doing like, a DDT on his knees, and you're like, well, these are two very different sets, but I guess it's going to work.
Exactly, and it worked. And again, they were high up the tag card for that reason when we cared about tag wrestling more than we do now.
Yeah, which is its own discussion, I suppose. I'm going to make a couple adjustments as we wrap up here. Edge is going down. Not a tier, but like the very bottom of Superstar.
Oh, okay. I thought you was like, you're going to put him down a tier.
No, I don't think so. And I'm still thinking about moving Punk up. I don't think Edge deserves to be in the middle of Superstar, even though that's his nickname and all that jazz. Like Batista, for example, I have higher because of what he did outside of WWE and continues to do. And does Edge deserve to be higher than Eddie Guerrero? Probably not. So, as much as I love Edge, and I'm as big of a fan as anybody, I'm going to move him to the bottom of Superstar. I'm still looking right at CM Punk, who, I mean, I think this most recent stretch is what's making me want to put him up a tier. Because now it's like he's come back and he's still as over as ever. And it's not just, I mean, it's been almost a year now. It's not like the novelty is wearing off.
No, I think Rollins' promo on Monday was a pretty good indicator of that exact point that you're making.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that what Punk did so long ago was relevant enough to make Cena referencing it a massive deal, I'm going to move him up. I'm going to put him on the very bottom.
I mean, you're reacting to the past like 10 days, but the past 10 days are also positioning the next 6 months. Like, I think it's very clear what WWE is setting up here.
Yeah.
And again, I think this weekend you'll get some more clarity on where that's going as well. I don't believe that we're going to have this is the last Cena Punk match.
I don't think so. If anything, this could be the last match of Cena's career, potentially, if it's going to be like the redemption arc or something like that. And I'm putting Hulk Hogan in the bottom of legend. We talked about all the reasons why he's an awful human being, but the fact remains he's the biggest name wrestling's ever have and ever will have. He's bigger than Stone Cold. He's bigger than The Rock. Yeah, they have higher peaks than Hulk Hogan, but Hulk Hogan carries this industry for 20 years. So despite the fact that he's, just a tiny bit racist and some other problems, I have to put him in the bottom of legend. I have to do it.
Did my NWO point help?
No, not really. I think just in general. I mean, it's interesting because like the whole deal with him turning heel was like, oh my God, that would never happen. It's Hulk Hogan. He tells you to eat your vitamins and say your prayers and all that jazz. He didn't really change to be Hulk Hogan.
No.
It's like Hulk Hogan, the heel, was just like turning up the asshole side of him a little bit, which I guess is true of a lot of folks, but him in particular, it was like he still wanted to be cool. He still wanted to be like beloved and hated at the same time. That was the only difference. So I think it just looks weird having him in Superstar because like if we're gonna make it about the off the grid outside of the ring stuff, then he needs to be down there with Vince McMahon. And if it's not that, then it needs to be in Legend because it's Hulk Hogan.
I think the best comp I have of what you're kind of going over in terms of being a super, biggest star and all that is it's like how we struggle to compare like a quarterback from the 1970s and how good they were to modern day, because where wrestling was as a television program and a live attraction back then to where it is today in the cultural zeitgeist is different. Wrestling's big. Netflix paid $1 billion to show. I'm not saying it's not. There's also so much else available between sports and television and movies and all that like wrestling has its own niche spot right now. But then when you look back, it's like as a cultural icon type of thing. Yeah, there's a reason like people still only vaguely kind of know who Roman Reigns is, despite the fact that he carried a belt for more than 1,000 days. Like, just because the breadth of what you could be interested in is so much wider because we have so many more options in the 2010s, 2020s than we did when Hogan was at his height, and then running as WWE, WWF starts getting going on television and really picking up. It's so hard to compare it. It's just really, really hard to do. And I thought about that as I'm thinking about Andre the Giant wrestling versus, Big Show, the Giant, all that, and naming him that. And it's such a weird conundrum to be in.
Everybody wants to be cool now, but wrestling has its roots in carny culture, as you referenced earlier in the episode. And Hulk Hogan was the tour de force for 20 years.
Exactly. I mean, of that
I don't like the guy.
side of, yeah, right. Of that side of culture, which again, there's probably less people were fans of wrestling, but a higher percentage, if that makes sense. I guess there's just more people in general. It's weird because, again, I know a lot of people, watch wrestling. We're not selling out WrestleMania in football stadiums if it wasn't fucking popular. Netflix isn't putting on for $1 billion. It's not popular.
Yeah. And that's on part because of the groundwork that Hogan and others, does the industry make it to this point without Bruno Sammartino? Probably not, but it's difficult even then because that's a whole other era now where it's like, well, now we're not even talking about a guy now we're just talking about regions.
Yeah.
And
which, again, it's weird because, I'm assuming more people know who Hulk Hogan is, I guess, for a lot of other bad reasons. But then he was a wrestler more so than people might know that, Randy Orton is a wrestler. I guess is the best comp I can kind of do.
And it's a little odd because everybody else in that tier without him in it is at least a 4-tool player. Are Orton or Reigns the best on the mic? No. But nonetheless, Hulk's big enough that I think he has to be there.
That's fair.
And, if it wasn't for the other stuff, if this is Hulk Hogan circa 2004, well, he's probably an icon, first of all. If not, he's at the very tippy top of legend. This is the compromise I'm going to make, is stick him in the very bottom of the legend tier because it just looks weird. And I know he's not next to Andre anymore, but that's fine. I know I'm not moving Andre.
No, Andre
still
belongs down there.
Maybe if I were older, I would care more about Andre. I think he's fine where he is. Not like it's a slight. All right, so in 2 weeks, I will be gone, so there will be no live show, but I think Cody and I are going to finish this off and post that then. So in 2 weeks, we'll post part 4, the final part, because whatever we want to get to, we're going to get to in that episode. We're not going to a part 5. But again, Sting, Triple H, Mick Foley, a bunch of other notable folks are still left to go, and we'll take one final look at the list and decide if everybody else is in about the correct space, and then how we can even compare it to the group, although it's going to be a bit of a nightmare trying to find everybody in that sea of names, but we can look at the group list and see at least the top tiers, who ended up there, what we disagree with, all that jazz. Next week, I don't even remember who's here. I think Dave is gone, but Sean is back. Does that sound right? Who knows?
It's the summer.
Sometime in June or in July, rather, there will be a game show. We got some other stuff coming up. There's a Kevin Durant trade that happened. I'm wearing a Sun shirt. We're not talking about that. There's Caitlin Clark drama. We're not talking about that. We got lots of other stuff to get to. But that's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, grayareas.live or youtube.com/@grayareaslive. We'll see you next week.